Hello, and welcome to this CIPSRT Town Hall. I'm Emily Kosick, and I'm the Knowledge Manager at CIPSRT. Today's topic is the Internet-Delivered Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Public Safety Personnel, Interim Outcomes in Saskatchewan and New Directions. The presentation today is in English, however, we do have a French clinician with us for the Q&A, so if you have any questions you would like answered in French, please just ask in the questions box. I do have to go through and do a few housekeeping things before we get started. So first of all, I like to let the attendees know that you are in listen-only mode. This is so that we can limit ambient noise and feedback during the presentation. Today's session is also being recorded. A copy of the recording will be sent out to everyone that registered within 48 hours. Throughout the presentation, we ask that you use the question box to ask questions. We'll be sure to answer them during the Q&A. If there are technical questions, we will try to answer them throughout the presentation. Just so you know, some organizations do block the GoToWebinar launch window. This means you may have to join us by phone if you're having trouble hearing or viewing the session. All right, so now let's get on to today's presenter. Today's presenter is Dr. Heather Hadjistavropoulos. She's the principal investigator on the PSPNET project. She's also a professor of psychology at the University of Regina and founder and executive director of the online therapy unit. Hello, Heather.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Amélie Fournier. She is our French clinician and she is leading the Quebec side of PSPNET. So she's here with us today to answer some questions after Heather's presentation.
Bonjour. Hi.
Hi, Amélie. So we are going to start today with a few polls, and this is just to get to know everybody better and see what their knowledge of PSPNET is. So the first question we want to start with is, have you taken an online course before? So that poll is going to launch, and you're going to get an opportunity to answer that question. So go ahead and start answering now. All right, I'll give everybody a few more seconds to get their answers in. All right, so as you can see from our results, 78% of you have taken an online course before. I suppose that's not really surprising given that we're living in a COVID world. So let's move on to our next poll, and that is, how familiar are you with PSPNET? So go ahead and answer that question now. Okay, I'll give a few more seconds for everybody to get their answers in. All right, so let's share those results with you. So as you can see, 20% of people are very familiar with PSPNET. That's great to hear. 29% are somewhat familiar. 19% have heard the name but don't know anything about it. That's great. I'm glad you're here today with us so we can tell you. And 32% of you are not at all familiar. And again, great to have you here so we can tell you all about it. All right, so our next poll is, how important do you think assessment is in online therapy? So this basically means, how important do you think it is that people are screened before they start their online therapy? All right, we'll give you a few more seconds just for everybody to answer. All right, so as we can see from the results, it looks like the majority of you do think it's very important for people to be assessed before they begin online therapy. All right, So we have one more poll for you today before we get started with the presentation. And that question is, would you prefer online therapy if you didn't have to interact with a therapist? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that for you now, and you can go ahead and answer. Okay, give me another 5 seconds to answer. All right, so it looks like the majority of you said no, you would not prefer it if a therapist was not available. Although I do see 11% of you did say yes, you would prefer it if a therapist was not available. And some of you, 36%, are on the fence. All right, well, thank you so much for contributing to those polls. We appreciate it. It's great to get your feedback so we know where we are before we start. I am going to change the presentation over to Dr. Hadjistavropoulos right now so that she can go ahead and begin. Perfect.
There we go. Okay, now I have to, there. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm delighted to have the chance to tell you about how things have been going with PSPNET and some of our new directions moving forward. It's very encouraging to see how many people signed up. I am going to spend just a little bit of time backtracking and telling you why we developed PSPNET and what we actually do before I get into the outcomes and some of our next steps. And I think this is actually important because I do know that we have some people who are new to PSPNET on the line. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge all the people that work with me on this project, including my co-investigator, Dr. Nick Carlton, and project manager, therapists, research team, and our IT team. I also really want to acknowledge our partners. So PSPNET has been partnering with different organizations to help basically spread the word about PSPNET. And it's extremely important, and we're very grateful for that partnership because if you build PSPNET, it only works if we can actually get the word out. So these partnerships are really important. And our partners have actually also really been helpful in developing our service and making sure that we're meeting the needs of PSP. So why did we develop PSPNET? Well, basically, as I'm sure most of the people who are on the line know, that mental health problems are actually extremely common in general in the public, but they're sort of even more common in PSP. And this is research that has been done by Nick Carlton that really shows that the nature of the work that PSP do really puts them at risk of having some mental health concerns. That includes depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, however, we know that problems are very common, but it's difficult for people to access care. And I think this picture really depicts sort of some of the challenges that people have in finding care. And PSPNET is really about trying to help people get care that they might need, support that they need. When we started this research off, we actually did some interviews, and these were conducted and led by Dr. Fournier and Dr. Bernay. Basically what they found is there's a number of reasons that PSP are not getting care, and stigma is an issue. So concerns about being judged and discomfort with vulnerability kind of comes with being PSP, but also logistical barriers. And what we're trying to do with PSPNET is kind of give people a helping hand in getting over some of those barriers to getting care. We're specifically interested in trying to help people get access to cognitive behavior therapy. And you might wonder, like, why CBT? There's lots of other forms of therapy. And really, we focused on that for a couple of reasons. One is it really lends itself well to online delivery. And secondly, there's a ton of evidence that shows that this particular form of care is helpful for clients in overcoming mental health concerns. Not that other approaches aren't helpful, but we just have a lot of evidence supporting CBT, so that's why we focused on that. The basic idea behind CBT is it sounds simple, but it's actually really, really important. And that's the idea that what you think and what you do impacts how you feel. And so in CBT, we're trying to help people improve well-being by identifying and managing kind of the thoughts that they're having as well as behaviors. I have a couple of quotes that I think really help bring home the idea of CBT and what we're trying to do. And so one is, your strongest muscle and your worst enemy is your mind. So train it well. And another is that your behavior is the result of your behavior. So really what you're doing actually promotes and perpetuates future behavior. And if you want to change something or change how you feel, sometimes that means that you need to change those behaviors. And so that's what CBT is all about. In Internet CBT, what we're trying to do, and actually we've had some success with, is we're taking that material that's typically shared in face-to-face treatment, and we're putting it online in the form of the course. So I think the idea that I think about 78% of you have taken an online course, we're translating face-to-face treatment into basically an online course. And it's done through sharing text. We try and keep it really easy to understand. We break it down into chunks, images, some video and audio to help with that translation of what you do in face-to-face and putting it online. So it's shared over the course of, typically over the course of a few months. We also, though, pair it with therapist assistance, and that can take different levels depending on the client. So sometimes it's just optional support. So the therapist is there if you need it. Sometimes it's regular once a week support, and sometimes it goes up to twice a week support. And most of that support happens online, so through secure emails, but sometimes it's also a phone call. In general, what we find in past ICBT studies is it takes about 20 minutes of therapist time, and that's because the online course is really doing most of the work in terms of sharing the information. And also because we break down the information into manageable parts. So I think in Canada, ICBT still seems quite novel, but there's actually been a lot of research on ICBT that shows that it produces similar results to in-person CBT, but actually overcomes those barriers that I talked about before in terms of stigma and logistics. And it's what we're trying to do basically with ICBT is offer a new doorway to getting mental health. So we're not saying that the other doorways are not important, but this is sort of an extra doorway to get the help that you need. With PSPNET, our goal then is to take ICBT and to tailor it to specifically meet the needs of PSP, to then implement it in Saskatchewan and Quebec. But while we're doing that, to evaluate and optimize it. So we're continually learning from PSP who take ICBT and really trying to improve it. Our second goal is to really develop a plan that will allow us to sustain PSPNET in these provinces, but also potentially extend it to other provinces. And we do get a lot of requests to extend it, and that's certainly our goal moving forward. So just a little bit of a background in terms of how we developed PSPNET. We started off with taking information that we've been delivering or have learned through the online therapy unit at the University of Regina, and taking that information and using it to develop PSPNET. And some people wonder, like, why the University of Regina and like, why the online therapy unit? And it really comes down to, I think, it's really the early bird gets the worm kind of idea, that the online therapy unit is the first established ICBT clinic in Canada. And it's not like other people don't deliver ICBT, but something that is very unique about the online therapy unit is that we've been delivering ICBT, but also been doing research for over 10 years to really learn about how to optimize ICBT. So we've now actually worked with over 8,100 clients. We've had quite a bit of research funding and done a lot of projects. And a lot of the research has really been about trying to tailor ICBT to meet the needs of certain specific populations. And something else that's unique about the unit, and I think why we were chosen to work on this particular project, is that we collaborate extensively with researchers in other areas of the world, so Australia and Sweden, for example. And then, of course, something sort of all good, just sort of being in the right place at the right time, it happens that the University of Regina is also known for its work with PSP. So it's a collaborative project between CIPSRT and the online therapy unit to develop PSPNET. And that's really why we were selected to move forward in this area. In terms of the development, we spent a lot of time, and again, this goes down to Dr. Brunet and Dr. Fournier, doing interviews with PSP to really understand what their needs were and what PSPNET should look like and how we should go about tailoring what we've been doing in the online therapy unit to meet the needs of PSP. So they conducted these stakeholder interviews and gathered a lot of information that's been super helpful to us. And some of the things that they learned along the way were, one, PSP have very diverse needs. It's important that we have a program that's not only addresses PTSD, which is common in PSP, but also addresses anxiety, depression, and anger, and other mental health issues as well. We also heard about the importance of having specialized therapists. So PSP have often had the experience of seeking face-to-face treatment, but finding that the therapists that they're working with sometimes don't have the experience that they need or the background knowledge of PSP. We learned about sort of their wants in terms of the length of treatment and amount and type of support, and also about their unique experiences that we needed to incorporate into PSPNET. So that brought us to PSPNET. And the way this works is PSP is broadly defined, and this actually comes from our contribution agreement with the federal government, which I should mention that without their support and interest in this particular service, that we wouldn't be around. It really does require funding to get this off the ground. And so the service is basically designed to meet the needs of diverse PSP, so police, fire, paramedics, corrections, border services, communication, dispatch personnel. We're here for both current and former PSP. That would be people who are working full-time or part-time or volunteer. And we're focused right now on Saskatchewan and Quebec, but our long-term goal, as I mentioned, is to get to other provinces as well. In terms of who's included and excluded, so of course you need to be current or past PSP. We do the assessment up front to make sure that it is a good fit for the symptoms that clients are experiencing in terms of anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress injuries. 18 years of age or older. Of course, you have to be comfortable with and have access to the internet. Have a local medical contact in case of emergencies. So this is actually has turned out to be quite important in order to coordinate care and be from Saskatchewan or Quebec. We do some screening, so the service is not recommended if you have severe problems with alcohol or drugs at this time, in which case we would refer you to a different service, or if there's severe mental health problems like mania or psychosis, or somebody's in the need of emergency services right at that moment. So the way things work right now is you go online, you create an account, and the purpose of creating the account, like sometimes people find this a little bit annoying, but it's really important in order to keep information secure. So an account is created. You then complete an online screening, and that provides the background information to therapists to see if this is a good fit. And then we conduct the telephone screening, and we actually find that this is really important. So I was really glad to see that most people recognize the importance of this. It's important for therapists in order to be able to work with you effectively, to have the information and to explore, what's going on for you. And also, it helps ensure that if it's not a good fit, that we understand where to refer you. The other purpose of the telephone call is really to make sure that you understand what ICBT is all about and what it's not about. So it's about matching the service. Assuming that it's a good fit, clients then start through ICBT. We start off with 8 weeks of service, so that's the materials are distributed over the 8 weeks. But we do have the potential to extend up to 16 weeks if clients are having a difficult time getting through the materials. As you go through this particular program, there's weekly questionnaires that clients complete. And the purpose of those is really to help your therapist monitor how things are going. So if symptoms were to elevate or escalate, they would get in touch and try and coordinate care with that service provider. And also if things are going well, they have that information as well to offer support and encouragement. And typically we start with once a week support, but that can be reduced if clients prefer to work on their own or increased if extra support is needed. And most of that support is done through email. The vast majority of our support is email support. And the reason for that is it's very convenient for clients. They can get the messages at any time. They can send off messages when they want, so if that's the middle of the night. But we do also offer phone support as needed. And then at any time throughout this, so at telephone screening or during treatment or after treatment, if we felt like referral is needed, we would do that too. In terms of the course, we offer a Transdiagnostic Wellbeing course. And what that means by Transdiagnostic is that it's meant to cover multiple problems. So that the materials are set up so that you're getting information that would be applicable to whether you had depression, anxiety, or trauma. And we're teaching core skills that apply across disorders. And then in terms of tailored, all the information has been tailored to PSP. So we provide this core content, and then the stories and examples are all appropriate for and specific to PSP. So the first lesson is really about education, helping clients sort of discover and think about the cycle between thinking, behaviors, and feelings and physical sensations. And again, you would get education about various disorders. The second lesson is on a core strategy called thought challenging, so helping clients identify and challenge core thoughts. And the third lesson is about managing physical symptoms, which are very common in depression and anxiety and trauma. So the symptoms that go along with anxiety, for instance, or low mood. The fourth lesson is about graded exposure, and that's where we're working on behaviors and activity scheduling to the extent that that's needed. And the fifth lesson is around relapse prevention and helping people identify sort of the triggers for maybe a kind of a relapse or increase in symptoms. And sort of preparing for the fact that it is quite common that even if you've done really well in therapy, to have times where symptoms come back and sort of being prepared to manage those. So it's actually a really important module. So all the materials that we're using actually were developed originally at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. And they've been studied with, I think it's like 20,000 adults. And then we've been using those in the online therapy unit and adapted them further. And now PSPNET has taken them and adapted them for the needs of PSPNET. I should mention that we have these 5 core lessons, but we also have extra materials that are there and that therapists refer clients to as needed as we go along. So things like assertiveness, communication, problem solving, extra resources for PTSD, sleep, etc. And then I've already talked a little bit about therapist guidance, but all of our therapists have graduate level training in psychology or social work. They're registered providers. They've been trained in ICBT and they get ongoing supervision. And as I mentioned before, we offer sort of varying levels of therapist support. as we go along, we are asking clients to complete questionnaires. And I know that this is a little bit annoying for the clients, but it's really critical for us in order to keep improving our service. So we're doing outcome measures. First, you start them at pre-treatment as part of your screening. They then happen again at 8 weeks. We do them again at 16, 26, and 52 weeks. And this really will help us understand the extent to which changes happen and also the extent to which they're maintained over time. And we have diverse measures that we're looking at. I should mention that if you're interested at all in following how we're doing in terms of services, you can just go on to PSPNET, and this is kind of what you'll see there. Under the tab of research, there's a tab called service delivery outcomes, and there we update this on a monthly basis, the number of clients that we've worked with and the outcomes that we're finding. So to date, we have had over 10,000 visitors to our site, which I think really reflects the interest in what we're up to. In Saskatchewan and Quebec, since we started November 29th, we've had 114 screens completed. 108 clients have started treatment, so we have a very high acceptance rate. It's about 5% of clients that we've referred on, and either it's because it's felt like actually their symptoms aren't that high right now, or they, knowing a little bit more about the course, they've decided that they'll wait to take it at a time when they have a bit more time. So far, we're having an 81% completion rate of all the materials on our website. So all of those core modules, which is actually a really good completion rate. So if you look at face-to-face treatment and the percentage of clients who complete all the sessions that were planned, it's actually probably lower than this. And even in terms of ICBT and the outcomes that we find, the completion rates are higher than we even typically see. So clients are really doing a good job of completing these materials. We have about 19% of clients who have withdrawn once they've started. And typically what happens there is that their availability changes. And so in that case, they can come back to us at a later time and resume treatment at a later point. So you would go through the screening again. And again, this is actually a pretty good rate. I should mention that if you offer ICBT without therapist assistance, that completion rate of materials is a lot lower. So the number of clients, often will do one lesson and then they'll drop out. A few will go on to 2 lessons and so on. So that therapist support is a really key factor in helping clients work their way through materials and kind of keeping it up and persisting. In terms of who's participated so far, we've had PSP come from diverse sectors. So the biggest is police, paramedics, and corrections, but we are getting the other sectors as well. We have a mix of men and women. We do tend to get more women than men, but actually this is a pretty good percentage of men. In the online therapy unit, for instance, we would only get about 30% men. So we do know that men tend to be less likely to reach out for care. So we think this is a good sign. Clients are coming from both large urban areas and those that are under 90,000. Sometimes people think that this is only a service for those who are in a rural or remote area, but in fact, when you're in a large area, there's still lots of barriers to getting care, including stigma and just time, getting the time away from work or family. Getting a mix of ethnicity, primarily white, but also we are pleased that we're serving some minority groups as well. And I would say most of our PSP are actually still working. In terms of when clients come in, we do see definitely that the symptoms are triggered by work, but there's also usually non-work related stress as well that's happening. And of course, when there's non-work related stress, that ultimately will impact work. Most of our clients are coming in reporting problems with depression. About 56% report generalized anxiety, 47% panic, and we see PTSD is at 43%. And so I think that's really important to point out, because sometimes there's this assumption that PTSD is the primary problem and that the other problems are not as significant. In fact, they are definitely significant. I think what this picture also tells us is our decision to have a transdiagnostic program that meets the needs of multiple conditions is really important. You see here on 2+ conditions, 63% of our clients have more than one condition. So if we were only treating single disorders, this would be a bit problematic. About 19% of our clients come in and not at a clinical level. And what's happening here is that they can kind of see that something's happening. It's not quite at a level that it's causing as much distress or disability, but it's there, and they sort of want to take a step to prevent problems in the future. In terms of our outcomes, this is quite a busy graph, but I'm going to just explain it here. The blue bars show if clients came in at a non-clinical level, that they maintained that non-clinical level throughout the 8 weeks of treatment, which is positive. And then the yellow bars show the percentage of our clients who were in the clinical range to begin with and then had a significant drop. Either they went to the non-clinical range or they went from like severe symptoms to moderate symptoms. So we're really having a great impact on depression, anxiety, trauma, panic. And you can see where anger is something that we're kind of working on and would like to continue to work on. Social anxiety is another one. So these are actually really great outcomes when we compare them to other ICBT programs. Something else that's really positive here, so this is actually the first out of the first 61 clients who completed the got through 8 weeks of treatment. We had 93% complete those 8-week measures. So they're based on actually a large proportion of our clients as well. On the right-hand side, you see another graph that I'm really very pleased with. So at 8 weeks, this 93% of the clients who complete our measures are saying that this was very much worth their time, that they would refer a friend, and it's increased their confidence and their ability to manage their symptoms in the future. And again, these are really great numbers, and especially great because they come from a high percentage of clients who are completing these measures. I also just wanted to share some feedback, some written feedback that happens at the end of the course. We give clients the opportunity to share some open-ended feedback about the course. And these are really representative quotes that we're getting from our clients. So just highlight, this course has been a real game changer in my life. The perception that this would be a benefit to anyone in the first responder world, and help me feel less alone with what I've been experiencing in my life. So again, really pleased with the type of feedback that we're getting from clients. Just wanted to say a few words about stress related to COVID-19. So after COVID-19, shortly after, we started to implement a survey that would help us sort of understand how PSP have been impacted by COVID-19. And so what you see here is actually the majority of clients are saying they're not necessarily experiencing strong emotions because of COVID-19, that they didn't feel that they're as impacted, their enjoyment's been impacted, or they're that fearful of getting COVID-19. But it is definitely the case that there are a percentage of clients that is definitely true or mostly true, and certainly somewhat true. I think a greater concern for PSP is the fear of a family member will get sick or die of COVID-19. That sort of stands out more among our clients. Nevertheless, we do have some quotes from clients, who have found this to be a particularly good resource because of COVID-19. So it's helped me manage my anxiety much better than I would have done. This is the perfect way to work on, receive online information, treatment for anxiety, and I'm really appreciating the online platform. So it's just good timing for us to be offering this during COVID-19. I like this picture. I feel like it depicts what we're trying to do with PSPNET. So offer some light when people are down and distressed and discouraged. So giving some hope here. In terms of new directions, all along, so we started our pilot in December of 2019 in Saskatchewan and then did our full launch in January. And right from the very start, we've continued to work on improving what we're doing. So January to March, we were really focused on our launch and getting the word out and preparing promotional materials. In April and May, we added some more video content. We realized that we needed some more materials around pain and grief. And we added our COVID-19 survey questions and really have also worked on coordination of care. So realizing that some clients who are coming in to work with us are very severe. And if we coordinate care with another healthcare provider, it just works out to be a safer way to offer our service. And over the summer, we've been working on our other extensions, which I'm going to talk to you about. So we developed the PSP PTSD course. And again, what we did here was we started with information that was developed in Australia. And this course is very much focused on PTSD only. And basically, what we know is that most of our clients actually have diverse concerns, but we do know that there are some clients that really want to make this the focus of their treatment. And so we developed a second course that we're trialing right now in Saskatchewan that's exclusively focused on PTSD. And it takes the same format as our Wellbeing course in the sense that it's 5 lessons spread over 8 weeks to start with. But all the examples and the material are very much honed in on PTSD. So it starts with education on PTSD. The second lesson is around managing physical symptoms that go with PTSD. And then we work on thoughts and behaviors and again, relapse prevention. So there's definitely overlap with the Wellbeing course, but again, it's just really honed in on PTSD. And we'd really like for you to help us in spreading the word about this course if you feel like that's something specific that PSP would want. What we heard from PSP is that getting that very focused treatment is very difficult, and that's why we decided to offer this second course. Of course, the other thing that happened over the summer is we launched in Quebec. So we started with a pilot, and last week we did our full launch. So we're now fully operational and have a team of registered psychologists who are able to deliver services to PSP in Quebec in French. So in terms of our pilot, we worked with 16 clients. We actually screened 16 clients. 15 of those were enrolled. 2 clients ultimately, although from Quebec, received services in English. And interestingly, though, the first adopters in Quebec came from corrections, similar to our other the other slide that I showed. Most PSP from Quebec are working. There's a mix of urban and rural, more women than men, and more white than minorities. So what's up for the future? Well, this is where we feel we are. I like this picture. I feel it depicts like we've launched, but there's still a ways for us to go. So I feel like for us to actually get to that other side, what we need to do is feel like we can sustain the service in Saskatchewan and Quebec, and also start to offer services in other provinces. So right now we're launched, but not fully where I want to be just quite yet. We have some updates coming in the fall. So based on content from our PSP, we've added in some extra content around COVID-19. We're adding some more audio files to our materials. We've actually made some changes to our sleep resources, offering more suggestions around sleep because it's such a huge concern for PSP. And we're adding a resource around alcohol use. So we know that that alcohol is a common strategy for dealing with depression and anxiety, and this resource is really around helping people explore the extent to which they might want to make some changes around alcohol use. key to our future is really continuous outreach. So we're doing a lot of social media, but we also have our team doing organizational outreach. So if, as an organization, you want presentations done for your organization, you want materials, you want to include PSPNET in your organizational website or materials, please just get in touch with us. This is really key. You know, we're very pleased with what we've done in terms of building PSPNET, but for this to be successful, we need this outreach. We need people to know about it. You can't use it if you don't know about it. So we really thank you in advance for all the help you can offer in terms of getting the word out. As I said, we're starting to work on the sustainability planning to understand what would it take for us to sustain PSPNET in Saskatchewan and Quebec and to extend to other provinces. And key to this is really understanding therapist time. So what we found is that on average, it takes us about 38 minutes. It's very specific to do a screening. There is a range there. And that's actually a really good timeline to get somebody into care. We currently have no wait to get into care unless the clients sort of decide that they get their screening and then they want to wait a week or two just to clear their schedules to have a bit more time. Should mention that the ICBT course does take time on the client's part. So, you know, definitely would take a couple of hours. The more intense the symptoms, the more time that the clients would be working on it. In terms of the average therapist time, time needed to support clients, on average, it's about 30 minutes, like plus or minus 2 minutes. But there is a range there too. So sometimes it's very little. So a client who comes in with low symptom level and they're not reaching out for support, it might take as little as 5 minutes. A client who's in big problem or having big problems and having difficulties and we're wanting to coordinate care with a physician, that could take up to an hour and a half. On average, our therapists are sending about 9 emails over the course of treatment. Again, lots of variability there. So anyways, the big point here is that this is really critical to us in order to understand what it would take to sustain PSPNET. So right now we're estimating that one FTE clinician, so psychologist or social worker, could work with about 225 clients a year, and that would give them sufficient time to do the screening, to do treatment with those clients, but also allow still some time for outreach and development. Another key thing that we're trying to figure out as we go along and look at sustainability are the pathways to PSPNET. So this is quite a busy slide, but let me explain it. So on the left-hand side is actually our current pathway to PSPNET. Right now, it's only about 11% of our clients who come to us have never had any care whatsoever in the past. 89% have told us that they've had some level of face-to-face care, and 32% tell us that they are actually taking medication. I guess one question we have is, should PSPNET be offered instead along sort of more a stepped care approach? So some people have proposed that maybe it makes sense to put PSPNET sort of on a stepped care approach. So if you have milder problems, you get self-help or peer support. A little bit more severe, you would get ICBT, and then at the top level would be face-to-face care or inpatient care. And I guess this is sort of one model that's examined. I don't know that it's as clean as this in terms of a stepped care approach. And in fact, what our research I think suggests is, rather than seeing this as being sort of a step on this care ladder, is that it's just a doorway. So, and it's a doorway that some clients want to have, and they also might want other doorways as well. Not sure if that fully makes sense, but I'm happy to offer or answer any questions about that. We did a survey in Saskatchewan and we asked PSP about ICBT, and it's interesting because 93% stated that they would access ICBT if they needed help. Now that's really encouraging to us. In addition, 68% stated that ICBT would be in their top 3 treatment choices. And I guess what we've heard from PSP is that they really want choices, and PSPNET is basically one other choice for clients. Not necessarily something that has to happen if you have a lower intensity difficulties. For some clients, they come to ICBT and it is completely independent, like that's all they want. Other people want it as a step down from face-to-face treatment. Other people want to start there, and still others want to combine it with medication. So we basically want to offer it in the way that clients want to receive it. So I thank you so much for hearing me today and coming to this talk. I always have lots to say. I've left a little bit of time at the end for questions. And I just again want to make a plug that if you know of somebody who's in distress or struggling, all you have to do is just refer them to pspnet.ca. And on that website, they'll find all the information that they need to learn about PSPNET. So we have a short video on there that explains it. There's written materials, and that's actually where they can go straight there. They don't need a referral and can just apply right away. And it's free. I also want to emphasize that because I always get that question, how much does it cost? It's free. So thank you again for coming. It's really encouraging again to know that so many people are interested in what we're up to.
For that presentation, Heather, it was great. It was wonderful to hear all the exciting things that you guys are doing, and I can really hear the pride you have in your voice and in telling us about it, which is great. It's lovely to see your commitment for that. We are going to just do a few more quick polls now that we've had this presentation, just asking you a couple more questions. So let me just get the next one started here. So this one is, does online therapy seem worthwhile? So, and now that we've told you all about it, how do you feel about it? Do you think it's worthwhile or not? And just a reminder, if you have questions, just submit them through the questions box and we'll get to them shortly. All right, so everyone's nice and quick to answer. So I'm going to go ahead and close that and we'll share that with you. So it looks like a huge majority of you are happy to say that online therapy does seem worthwhile. We're glad to hear it. So we are going to launch the next poll here, and that one is regards to, have your opinions on the importance of assessment and therapist interaction changed now that we've told you more about what PSPNET does? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. I think most of you thought it was important before, but it's always good to check in and see how you feel now. Give it about 5 more seconds to finish up there. All right, let's share those results with you. So it looks like the majority of you did think that they were both important before, but I am happy to see that 25% of you have indicated that yes, you now think they're both important. So I'm glad to see that the presentation has given you more information and you feel more confident in that answer. So thank you for that. All right, one last poll for you guys, and then we're going to go into the question section. So the last poll is, would you recommend PSPNET to a friend? So go ahead and launch that. Like the majority of you said that yes, you would recommend PSPNET to a friend. That's great. For those of you in the no or maybe column, hopefully maybe some of the answers will give you some more clarity. If not, you're always free to email us and let us know why. All right, so we are going to go into the question and answer portion of our presentation. Fill up the PSPNET information while we're doing this so that you guys have it in case you need it. So first question we have is, does someone need a diagnosis of PTSD to take the new PTSD course? Like, when is proof required?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So for the new PTSD course, what happens is you take the same screening that you take for the other course, and then the therapist will review the results. And we use a screening measure to see if it seems like PTSD is a concern. And then if it is a concern, the therapist would talk with the client to ask whether they wanted to focus in on PTSD or if they wanted to do the Wellbeing course, which again also does address PTSD, but also the other issues. So it's just a matter of whether you want something sort of more general or you want to focus in. So it's not a diagnosis that's required, but we do suggest that you have a certain elevation, and the screeners would talk to you about each course and help you make that decision.
So kind of a related question from another member of the audience.
Oh.
Do people have to bring their, oh, did you lose me?
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Do people have to bring their own PTSD diagnosis information to PSPNET when they register for the course?
Yeah, so what happens in that online questionnaire, we ask you lots of questions, and you wouldn't have to bring it, but you would be asked to respond to those questions about what you've been experiencing. So, you know, what your symptoms have been. And we ask really about what's going on for you now at the current time, like say in the past couple of weeks. And you'll be asked some questions about the trauma that you've experienced, how long it's been lasting, and also what those symptoms are. So you don't have to bring anything, but you will have to answer questions in order for us to sort of help you decide which course is the right fit.
ICBT therapy as well as other therapy concurrently? So can you do them together?
Yeah, so generally, if somebody is already doing other therapy, we would say not to do them at the same time. But there are some examples of where it might be a good fit. So say you were doing therapy and especially with EAP programs, you only have so many sessions and you're coming to the end, that it might be a good way to coordinate the transition from one to the other. Because it does take work and time on the part of the client working on PSPNET, we generally say probably do one at a time. Another example would be if you really are only getting in to see your therapist once every 2 months, then this might be a good thing that helps you in between. When you start and you do the online screening and also during the telephone screening, we would ask some extra questions about how much therapy you're having and help you kind of decide what to focus on. Again, if it seems like it's it would be a good transition or there's some compatibility, then we could set it up. There are different approaches to therapy. And so because each face-to-face therapy also takes time, it's not just the appointment that you attend. There's usually things that you're working on between the two. That would be the main reason why we wouldn't recommend both together, just because it's just too much. And especially with PSP, you know, you're limited on time. But other times it could be, you know, that a certain approach is maybe different than, you know, than what we're focused on. So CBT is very specific, and so we don't want to sort of get in a position where we're giving different advice. Although many types of therapy can be compatible and work together. So it would be a discussion for sure.
What are you guys doing to ensure and build that cultural competence for working with PSP for the therapists that are providing support through PSPNET?
Yeah, so all of our therapists, our PSPNET is part of CIPSRT. And so we are very much up to date in terms of CIPSRT research and knowledge. Nick Carlton, who is our PSP expert, is also on our team and works with the therapists. So some of the therapists that came into us also did start off with experience, so then they developed even more experience. And then now we have some very experienced PSP therapists who then mentor new therapists that we bring on. Everybody gets a lot of supervision when they come on. So what that means is there's weekly meetings. It also means, though, that if you're a new therapist, so this training materials that you go through, your emails will be supervised by a supervisor as you start. So they would be providing that support. And again, it's great because PSPNET is part of CIPSRT, so we have great access to knowledge and experts. If anything comes up that we don't understand, we have access to that information very quickly.
So we did have a question about, do you know how many clients a clinician can see face-to-face annually? Because you did have that stat about how many they can see doing online therapy.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I'd love to get that number from some other from some other clinics. I think in private practice, clinicians tend to see more clients than in, say, a community mental health clinic. And on average, I would say with face-to-face treatment, although there's often plans for clients to stay around for 12 sessions, the average is for clients being treated tends to be, there's quite a bit of variability around it, but can range from like some people showing up for one session to some people showing up for 16 or 20 sessions. So I actually don't have that, but I would say it's quite a bit less than the capacity for a clinician to work with clients with PSPNET. Even if it's exactly the same, though, what I would say is it's still really important. This is about offering a different way to get care. So even if, say, you treated the same number of clients, it's about giving clients an option, especially those who don't want to go face-to-face, who feel vulnerable going face-to-face, who have logistical issues. But in general, ICBT, the research suggests that clinicians can take on more clients than you can face-to-face.
So next question is, do you see PSPNET as being a useful resource for someone who has recently completed a CBT treatment program with a psychologist and has successfully returned back to work? So kind of maybe as an additional to their return to work program.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the client, and I think that's a good discussion with the therapist, and also you could apply to PSPNET and see. So I think for some clients, I actually think it could be really helpful. So as they're returning to work, it keeps the skills up. For other clients, though, if your symptoms have really reduced and you've built a really solid skills, I think it might not be needed. So it's really an individual thing. And I think it has a lot to do with, how solid you feel in those skills, and also, the level of symptom distress and what kind of environment you're going back into. It could also be the case that maybe you don't do it right away, but if you start to notice that you're relapsing or kind of forgetting some things, like that might be a great time to have it.
Does the course outcomes and goals include discharge planning and psychiatric referrals?
So at the very end of treatment, there's definitely discharge planning. So one of the things about this particular program is we do allow clients to go back on and access the materials for up to a year is currently what we're offering. So you can go back on and review it at any time. Also, I would say about our service is the materials. There's downloadable information so you can retain them long term. So even if you don't want to go back onto the website, you can keep materials with you so that you can readily review. And the clinicians will definitely kind of look at where your symptoms are at and talk about what your needs would be long term. That relapse prevention plan in the 5th module is really key to that. So understanding what might be your triggers, you know, what strategies you're going to use if you get triggered or you have symptoms that reemerge. We do, if a client wants, get in contact with the psychiatrist if you are on medication, especially if symptoms remained high. So that is something that we would do in conjunction, sort of discussion with the client. It's not an automatic, and in part because definitely if there was high suicidal risk and symptoms hadn't resolved, then it would be, you know, we would work with that provider. But if the symptoms have resolved and you actually don't want us to get in touch with that provider, we wouldn't do that without your permission.
Last question for today. There was a few people that were asking, which doesn't surprise me. When will PSPNET expand nationally? So what factors might affect this decision and what's needed to offer that national service to get it to that level?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, you know, some extra funding. You know, we're funded to deliver in Saskatchewan and Quebec and to, you know, cover the costs of the therapists in these 2 provinces right now, as well as to do the evaluation and ongoing development, which we think is really important. We've seen, you know, like so much development that we've done already. So it really is about building partnerships and looking for how we would fund that. But that's part of our sustainability planning. So, you know, we're costing that out. So if a province wanted to come to us and to extend this to PSP in another province, we're actually having those conversations right now. So that would just be a reach out to us, and we're definitely entertaining that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And everybody else, I'm sure that has attended appreciates it as well. I just have to do some final housekeeping here. And that's to let you guys know that there is a survey that's going to appear after the town hall today. Please take a couple of minutes and complete it. A video of this town hall that you watched will be sent to you in an email tomorrow. Also, please consider joining us for our next town hall, which is going to be on October the 15th. The topic is going to be managing the marathon, dealing with the stress of long-term emergencies. If you still have any questions and would like answers or want to submit a question for our next town hall, please email us at the email address available there. Again, Dr. Hadjistavropoulos, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thank you for giving us your time and attending the session. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.